Hi there. So, years ago, I worked at probably the biggest dealership in Virginia. It was called RK Chevrolet. I went in and gave it a go initially to sell cars even off the lot. I sold my first day a car, and then almost every day after that. It gave me the confidence to think I could sell ketchup packets to a woman completely dressed in white. However, it became short lived though, because when customers would come back to complain about issues relating to the condition of the car or the payments being higher or extra fees, etc. None of their problems had anything to do with me, but it became still disheartening to me just the same. When it began to bother me, I asked to be transferred to the service department. Wouldn't you know, I was put into another position of the company being dishonest or at least manipulative to the public. RK Chevrolet paid me literally a salary to seek out their customers from both departments to come in with their surveys, once they received it in the mail after buying a car or having their car serviced and get a free tank of gas. Who wouldn't want a free tank of gas, right? But you see, they wanted as many surveys as they could to be turned in and only, well received, right? I still remember the very large motto painted on the showroom wall, your trust is our top priority. Yet I have since learned, that businesses actually cannot pay to alter, coerce, or remove their reviews. It remains amazing to find out how many more things are not always what they seem. Similar, but more tragic circumstances occurred when Matthew Perry, the Friends star, who died recently. But wait for it, because his cause of death showed acute effects of ketamine. But wasn't he the one that admitted publicly that he only had a problem with Percocet and Vicodin? He entered recovery, began to speak out about addiction, even wrote a book about his journey to healing. Yet, the medical examiner spoke out after completing his autopsy, reporting he died of acute effects of ketamine and that the levels were much higher than any prescribing amount. The investigation proved he did not have a prescription for that. He also had not been to a clinic in weeks to receive that type of treatment or injection, right? However, during the search of his home, they found criminally large amounts of ketamine stored and all the evidence of the amounts of money he was spending on his actual drug of choice, even also how he was obtaining ketamine illegally. This drug proves already in this case to be far more powerful and dangerous than Percocet or Vicodin. In fact, a recent systematic review concluded that ketamine, mainly intended to be administered by injection or IV infusion, to the patient in very small amounts while in a clinical setting. It probably, reduces pain more than opioids, even with less nausea and vomiting, but with a higher risk of overdose when used outside of controlled medical supervision. His assistant was told and paid to keep an eye on him after dosing, and to handle all of his affairs because it is similar to like an anesthesia, but it turns out he was put in charge, of his drug trafficking. I find it to be criminal enough that the night just before he died, that his assistant, aware of his intoxication even, took a picture of Matthew sitting in his jacuzzi and posted it even on social media, then left him there and his home for some time. Upon his return, he found him unresponsive and floating in the same spot in the jacuzzi. The only thing left for him to do then was dial 911. Only a week later, though, authorities kicked in the door and raided the North Hollywood alleged stash house and supplier's apartment of a name Jasveen Sanghai. It is said they found key evidence connecting her to Matthew Perry's overdose death from ketamine. The agents also say they learned of a second victim who died earlier with little fanfare and press conference. His name was Cody McLowry. His autopsy report listed his cause of and proved he ordered a little even more variety of off of her menu, of drugs stashed and sold because he too was found as acute ketamine along with heroin, meth, and cocaine toxicity. Hold on one second, take a sip. I find it interesting that his sister, Kimberly, spoke on a sought out interview with Nightline to air the impact to the public, saying, quote, "It's tough to think that you have never heard really, it being even a cause of death." She goes on to say in regard to her brother Cody, quote, "Addiction was not something that was a part of Cody's life. However, the police mailed Cody's belongings to her, including his cell phone. She said the phone revealed a disturbing discovery. Her brother's texting messages back and forth between the two of them, talking about ketamine and how much she had available and how much it cost. Kimberly then says she texted Shanghai herself, stating, quote, "The ketamine you sold my brother killed him." It's listed as the cause of death. The indictment alleges that within days of receiving that text, Shanghai did a Google search for that ketamine. Can it be listed as a cause of death? Later, prosecutors say, though, that she continued to sell ketamine from her stash house even after that lookup. Yes, he has another good point and person in mind, I will add. Amy Winehouse. Her last name alone would have been a walking and talking contradiction, if not a title to her life and death. She also wrote and released, though, a song that went big worldwide. And the lyrics to the song Rehab, that even says, "They tried to take me to rehab, but I said no, no, no." Was she writing about herself? It turns out that it was not a good idea to release that song about refusing to go to rehab. And yes, herself refusing to go to rehab too. Definitely neither is praiseworthy because, woefully at just 27 years old, Amy Winehouse died from just that, alcohol toxicity. The coroner added that it was a level of alcohol commonly associated with fatality. He also said that Winehouse voluntarily consumed that much alcohol, and that 2 empty vodka bottles were on the floor beside her bed even when her body was discovered. I then direct you to a bigger star and a much bigger poison because I hear it often said that Michael Jackson is or was bigger than a person. The reality is that he is very talented, but is actually a person, just like, you and me. It really began that realization he was not being treated like a person when he died. A person should never become a victim of their doctors, first off, and then to constantly be surrounded by other people that were in such awe to please him. He could ask for virtually. Sorry, this one's a hard one for me too. You'll soon see. Let me take another sip and try this again. My point is, he could ask for virtually anything he wanted and get it. I have taken a lifetime myself, it seems, to try and better understand Michael Jackson specifically, because he began battling himself long before his addictions began. Michael Jackson was a big deal, starting as a kid, even to me myself. I had a Trapper Keeper covered with his pictures and a pair of his earrings with his face on them, too. I went to his concert when I was just 12 years old. When I grew up and became mom, to have my children, I took my older two anyway, also to see him in concert, and his sister Janet too. It started for them though even earlier, because with Tatiana, I think she was 4 years old, and I got her the cassette tape of "You Are Not Alone." She played it over and over until it broke, and then pleaded with me to give her another one, so I did. Then CJ came along, and I will tell you, he was smitten. Even took it to another level. He studied his dancing intensely and bugged me till I got him the hat, and then the glove, and then the jacket, just like my brother. Him and his uncle Bubby. God rest his soul, my brother. But CJ, he still has you beat, because he was breakdancing at 3. But they were, thought to be parallel for some time, with his music and, ways to honor it. But when Whittle was born, he began to serenade her with "Rock With You." It goes on and there's more, but what becomes my point is, because he was such a big deal to the point of even emulating him in my home, uh, more than anyone or anything, in the world. Yet when he died suddenly, it was a bigger deal than you could imagine. These were my children, suddenly losing their hero. Never mind my feelings. It was so hard to answer their questions and explain, especially his cause of death, mainly because of their age. Oddly, I had my 3 the same age as Michael's 3. They too, so young and tender, that we had our own memorial. We handmade posters and dozens of candles. CJ remains inspired and carries on his dance and costume. I knew, well, let's just say, I know, like many others, it weighs still heavy on the heart. I also know that many want answers to questions. They seek answers, even if, they wait till they're older to receive. So here it is, becoming raw and real, unbelievable. A cautionary tale, in fact, that hopes to deter and discourage, a repeat, of course, the level and or amount of drugs to begin with. So let's at least briefly now get a better understanding of what actually took place and outside of a hospital. Drugs that are clearly labeled for use by surgeons in the operating room, our medical staff in a facility with equipment, to monitor oxygen and blood pressure, even heart rate too. The drug used in smaller amount, in IV, specifically the drug in question, propofol, even mixed with other medications, but on its own can be fatal, especially in a larger quantity. Michael Jackson died of cardiac arrest at age 50. The cause reported by the LA Medical Examiner was a lethal combination of sedatives and propofol, an anesthetic, which ruled a homicide. Propofol, specifically, is a powerful agent to induce and maintain general anesthesia. So, what the hell is this setup in only an IV pole and bag hanging form along doing in Michael's bedroom? And not with any medical equipment to monitor his vitals, or, how about to resuscitate his heart in a state of emergency? All the equipment that they have in, say, an operating room where the medicine is only supposed to be allowed anyway, right? They often save a life, when needed, and can and do. I'm sorry, I'm going to try to keep my cool while I get through this and tell you that this Dr. Conrad Murray, at the very least, became incompetent when he agreed to do this for any amount of money, because Michael's life was worth so much more and could have been saved if protected and in, the appropriate surroundings, appropriate provided dosage. The harder truth is when you begin taking a drug, your body gets used to it. And often, there is the craving for more. It may even take more to get the desired effect, no doubt. The doctor kept giving just a little more over a, get this, 60-day period. The doctor not only forgot his oath to do no harm by agreeing to an amount of only 100,000 to administer this way in the first place. Ultimately, a murder for hire. He was overconfident and already paid, so he keeps increasing the dose, but then, wait for it, also leaves him alone um, for an unseen or said amount of time in the room. Now, remember, in Michael's defense, he didn't want to die. He just wanted help to sleep because he was struggling with a bad case of insomnia. I promise you, for his young children alone, because they meant everything to him. He wanted to be well rested and healthy to fulfill his role as a father, then also to have the ability to perform. And for the mega deal he had just signed, he had to have trusted this doctor he paid and under the impression he would be fine. We also, all of us, are humans, remember. So it is imperative, if you get a yes for a drug, consider its source and quantity. Too many celebrities, I can list several if you like, that get prescription drugs from multiple doctors, even in different names, and start the dangerous game of mixing and fixing their cocktails, even adding, alcohol or street drugs, assuming they are invincible, yet join the list of die too soon. Turns out they too are human, and their money or fame won't save them. Not when playing this game, because the incident with Michael Jackson, for example, I will tell you the part where he died. The doctor is to blame for that lethal dose of propofol given outside of a hospital setting. Um, He had his big oh shit moment when he thought to go back to Michael Jackson's room he had left only to find him dead, and his feeble attempt to perform CPR while still laid on his bed, by the way, when he knew also better on the floor. But either way, after his death couldn't save him. He also will not ever be able to silence his millions and millions of angry fans that will never forget what he did. Him losing his medical license is a given, to say the least. But involuntary manslaughter and only 4 years in prison, I have a problem with that. And you should too. Papa God must have other plans for him. But before Dr. Conrad Murray, Michael Jackson was untouchable. His Thriller album was the first in history to reach 33 times diamond. He became bigger than the Beatles. He had $10 million deal, or A, with Pepsi starting. Anyway, he had a clothing line, shoe line, LA Gear, all these things people had not really done before. And we are talking about double-digit $1 million deals that all started in the 80s. My heart continues to go out to his children. I pray for their precious broken hearts and their peace of mind after losing their loving father, especially being so close and innocent to what took place. I know it must continue to affect their lives. I hear the echoes of Michael Jackson's press conference, this is it, and shake my head. Then I recall that 911 call, when we had already, or he, excuse me, already gone into cardiac arrest. That tape gets replayed. Quote, "There is a man here that needs help. He is not breathing." One discussion later with officials, then overheard, asking why didn't they say it was Michael Jackson? Why is that relevant? Do you think it would have made a difference? It certainly didn't change the circumstances he was already in. I think better to pay attention even to the 911 operator, stunned to hear that a doctor was already there beside him, but that he was on the bed. He stammered, confused a little, saying, "Well, he knows better." No, he doesn't. And a full investigation followed, and since proved that, one of the hardest lessons to learn that I share with you. You can want for the world, but it doesn't mean it's going to happen. It also can be just one person and or one poor choice that can stop you. The fallout from an addiction for addicts and the people who love them is devastating. The manipulations, the guilt, the destruction of relationships, and the breakage of people. When addicts know they are loved by someone who is invested in them, they immediately have fuel for their addiction. Your love and your need to bring them safely through their addiction might see you giving money you can't afford. Saying yes when that yes will destroy you. Lying to protect them, and having your body turn cold with fear from the midnight ring of the phone. You dread seeing them and you need to see them all at once. You might stop liking them, but you can't stop loving them. If you are waiting for the addict to stop the insanity, the guilt trips, the lying, the manipulation, it's not going to happen. If you can't say no to the manipulation of their addiction in your unaddicted state, know that they won't say no from their addicted one. Not because they won't, but because they can't. If you love an addict, it will be a long and excruciating road before you realize that there is absolutely nothing you can do. it will come when you're exhausted, heartbroken, and when you feel the pain of their self destruction, pressing, relentlessly even and permanently against you. The relationships around the world around you will start to break and you'll cut yourself on the jagged pieces. That's when you'll know from the deepest and purest part of you that you just can't live like, that anymore. I have worked with plenty of addicts, but the words in this post come from loving one. I have, someone in my life. We may all do, who has been addicted to various substances. It's heartbreaking, to watch the effect on the people I love who are closer to him even than I am. I would be lying if I said that my compassion has been undying. It hasn't. It's been exhausting and stripped bare. You may feel regularly as though you have nothing left to give. What I have learned after many years is that there is absolutely nothing anyone can do to change someone. With all our combined wisdom, strength, love, and unfailing will to make things better for them, even. There is nothing we can do, especially if they are unwilling to make that first step for themselves, right? All right, guys, that's all for today. Hopes this helps. Bye.